I have been sharing on a monthly basis books that I have been hauling. Some stacks are bigger than others. I do want to be transparent, and I have in the recent videos, in letting you know that these are books that I, for the most part, have hauled, I think maybe all the way back since March. There were a couple of months where I just happened not to show book hauls, and then I hauled a whole bunch of books for my birthday. And that is actually a pre-booktube habit. I have for a very long time, basically since college and having my own apartment or home, have frequently at Christmas and or for my birthday hauled a large quantity of books, generally that I tend to get through over the next year or two or three. I, again, don't mind holding on to books for quite a few years. All right, so the book haul. What do I have? I have a whole bunch of books whose titles start with the letter D, because I was confusing myself with the way I've been doing it on and off for the last couple of months. So I think I'm going to go back to alphabetically going through my shelves and finding the books I haven't talked about yet. Some of these are going to be books that you have heard of. Some of them might not be. I have been told that I have a very eclectic collection of books and frequently share ones that people have never heard of before. So maybe you'll find something new that's a classic to read, and maybe you'll find something that's like new, like recently published or published in the last few years that you've never heard of. Whatever, let me know if you've read any of these books and if you enjoy them. The first one I have is Dracula. I realized I picked up a stack of books. I need to pick them up one at a time because I want to share a lot about these books with you, or at least more than usual. Okay, Dracula, Bram Stoker. I feel like this is a classic that a lot of people know. Gothic story, not necessarily the first vampire story, but a lot of people think it is. And yeah, I have never read this. I've been wanting to read it. And I finally decided this year that I was at least going to do myself the favor of having it on my bookshelf so that it would be more likely to get read sometime in the near future. That is my goal. And this is a limited edition. It doesn't say what it's about on the back of the book. It is a vampire story. It is Gothic spooky setting. I do know that most Gothic novels tend to feature a villain who is chasing or after a young innocent girl. That was a lot of what the trope was about at the time, was how society, and particularly men at the time, can very much be preying on young innocent women. And so if that is a trope or a topic that you are interested in, this may be a really creepy, interesting way to read about it. Now keep in mind, it is 18th century literature, so the horror then may be different than what you know now if you currently read horror novels. And I think it's also important to know that in Gothic fiction, one of the huge tropes was to take the setting and put it in a foreign place that the vast majority of readers would be unfamiliar with, to heighten that sense of unfamiliar and mysterious and confusion and not being sure how much of what was going on was cultural versus actually just supernatural. So those are other things you should probably know before reading this book. Another classic I have is Diana of the Crossways. This is a book that I believe I found in a used bookstore, and this is a classic also from the 18th century, but I don't feel like is actually in print anymore, or if it is, it's really hard to find. I have been looking for it for a couple of years, so I feel like this is a great example of hauling books and sharing them to let people know you can still find this. You just have to keep an eye out for it. So this is by George Meredith, who is an author who I do have a couple of works for, and I have not read from yet, and I really need to do that before I buy any more of his books. But I did pick this up because if I do like him, I know that neither my library has it, nor any new bookstore that I've ever seen. So I'm not a big e-reader fan, so that was not an option. So his heroine was based off of the character Caroline Norton, who was a novelist, poet, essayist, granddaughter of a well-known Irish playwright, and at 19 she married an abusive husband, had multiple children with him. Lots went on in their relationship and outside their relationship. She had a huge conflict and lawsuit that she became involved in that Charles Dickens actually featured in his book, The Pickwick Papers, and other scandals were part of her life. So definitely sounds like some high drama. I don't know that this is technically called a sensation novel, but it sounds like based on the story that it's based off of, that'll probably be similar in that theme. And interesting that it's also talking about diaries. I was excited to find this next book, which is Dark Princess by W.E.B. Du Bois, and I was excited about this for a couple of reasons. One, because Mint Editions is a publisher that I'm really starting to keep an eye out for, and the bindings of their books are really easy to locate on a shelf. They always have like very intricately patterned spines and covers for their book with this sort of black section in the middle and addition here in the black on the front. And the reason I am keeping an eye out for books that they are binding and making is because their basically mission at this point with their classics is to find like forgotten hidden gems of classics and bring them back into print. The last one that I read was The Blue Castle by Ellen Montgomery, and I really enjoyed that. So I do feel like, and I'm hoping that they really are hitting on some hidden gems that I personally will like. The other reason I was excited to find this book is because I read The Souls of Black Folk, I believe last year by W.E.B. Du Bois, and absolutely loved that. That was nonfiction, but it gave me such a great sense of his writing that I wanted to try another work of his. So being able to give an author a second chance while also reading a work of his that someone has identified as possibly a hidden gem, and in this case, a fiction novel, super exciting. And this says, in New York City, aspiring obstetrician Matthew Towns has hit the glass ceiling. Super relatable. Unable to continue his medical studies and disillusioned by his circumstance, he leaves the United States for Germany and in Berlin meets a purple-haired princess named Catilia. I'll put her name on the screen. Considered to be his favorite work, Dark Princess is a socio-political romance novel. All of those last words are buzzwords for me in books. I love books about social conflict. I don't mind political conflict in there, especially if it's socio-political conflict, which W.E.B. Du Bois writes about so well. And then a romance novel on top of that with a purple-haired princess in Journey from a guy who hit a glass ceiling in the US. Come on, sign me up, sign me up. You can sign yourself up if you want to, but I'm not telling you you have to, so. I have The Dud Avocado by Elaine Dundy, and okay, in this case, like, this got hyped for me. This was thanks to watching a book review. So now all of you who do book reviews have to stop doing book reviews because that's consumerist and you're influencing me. No, please keep doing all of the things. I want to know about other books that I don't know about. So thank you, Kelly, because I bought this because of you. What is The Dud Avocado about? On the back, it says it follows the romantic and comedic adventures of a young American who heads overseas to conquer Paris in the late 1950s. Edith Wharton and Henry James wrote about the American girl abroad, and it was Elaine Dundy's Sally Joyce Gorse who told us what she was really thinking. Charming, sexy, and hilarious, The Dove Avocado gained instant cult status when it first published, and it remains a timeless portrait of a woman hell-bent on living. Love it. Kelly Smart was good. Right up my alley. Really enjoy New York Review Books as a publisher. I feel like they are doing something very similar to Mint Editions. In fact, I feel like different kind of vibe on the pictures, but similar concept in terms of how they're marketing the books. Okay, that was the last classic I have. That was kind of a modern classic. And the next I have is one book that I hauled that is a work of science fiction, and that is Diaspora. This is my attempt to branch out more into science fiction, which I'm pretty sure is my favorite genre, or at least like my favorite actual genre. I know a lot of people would think that is classics, and I love a good classic. However, classics themselves are not actually a genre. It's just a categorization of books that happened before a certain time period. So I do still need to figure out within that time period of classics, like books written over 50 to 100 years ago, what my favorite genre is. Outside of that, I do know that science fiction tends to be my favorite genre. And so I've been trying to find within science fiction what my favorite subgenre is. And I believe at the very least it is hard sci-fi, which does not mean that it's hard to read, though it can be. It just means that in the hard sci-fi, they're tending to be realistic with the science and how things are working. That's frequently described, and so is the working of the universe they're in or whatever, and that you get more details about it. So it is front and center. Back to this book, Diaspora. This is, I have been told, hard sci-fi. Let me tell you what it is about. In the 21st century, humanity drastically reconfigured itself. Many became polis citizens, joining vast computer networks to live as conscious software. Gives me a little bit of a Matrix vibe. Some of the citizens moved into Gleisners, disposable, renewable, robotic bodies, acting as hardware for their digital minds, intentionally keeping contact with the physical world. So now I've got, what is it, iRobot, the Borg, and the Matrix all combined in one. Then there are the holdouts. There's always holdouts. The fleshers, descendants of man left behind in the muck and jungle of Earth without any genetic connection to the digital world. Some developed into dream apes, and others cavort in the seas or the air, but all are working to shape out a roughly human future. When an unseen disaster ravages the fleshers, it reveals the possibility that polices themselves might be at risk from bizarre astrophysical processes that seem to violate fundamental laws of nature, thus hard sci-fi. Anyway, I don't get what that last bit is about yet, but I know I will by the time I'm done reading this book. At least I hope so. I also have one fantasy book, which I picked up so recently that I haven't even logged it yet in my computer. But that is because it was recently mentioned for a local book club that I just recently decided to join, which is the Sci-Fi Fantasy Book Club that's local to me. And I joined it because I found that of the offerings, that was the one that had the most books that I would read, even if I didn't read them for the book club. So the next book pick, I think, in the month of September or October, is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. LeGuin. Now, I did own this book quite a while ago, mass market paperback used. So honestly, if I end up loving this book, I would have bought another edition anyway, because mass market paperbacks hurt my hands. I think I got that one because I found it free at a little free library and returned it to one before moving. Okay, The Dispossessed. You probably know about it. Let me remind myself about it. The Dispossessed is a masterful, thought-provoking tale of anarchism and capitalism, individualism and collectivism, and one ambitious person's quest to bridge the ideological chasm separating two worlds. And this is the story of an anarchist who ends up traveling to the mother planet, which is full of warring nations, great poverty, and immense wealth. And greater than any concern for his well-being is the belief that the walls of hatred, distrust, and philosophical division between his planet and the rest of the civilized universe must be torn down. Very relevant topics, I feel like, which in general, I feel like a lot of the books for this particular book club were like very on the nose. I don't know how well that was like intended or planned, given that they put out all their books for like 6 months at a time. But yeah, I've heard good things about Ursula K. Le Guin. I've been told I should read her, and I think this is going to be the book club that forces me to do it. And the last three books I have are all translated works. I may have shared this first one before, but why not do it again? Dictionary of the Khazars. This has been on my TBR wish list for a couple of years, and I found it used, as you can see from the sticker, that I need to do some more work on getting off. And this got recommended to me after reading another one of my books. I don't remember which one, but I remember thinking, oh yes, I definitely want to try that. And what is this book about? It's written in two versions, male and female, which are identical save for 17 crucial lines. And both are available separately as vintage international books. Actually, I don't know if they're available separately or at all anymore because I've only found this used, not even at my library. But anyway, it's the imaginary book of knowledge of the Khazars, a people who flourished somewhere beyond Transylvania between the 7th and 9th centuries. Eschewing conventional narrative and plot, it's a lexicon novel combines the dictionaries of the world's three major religions with entries that leap between past and future, featuring three unruly wise men, a book printed in poison ink, suicide by mirrors, a miracle princess, a sect of priests who can infiltrate one's dreams, romances between the living and the dead, and much more. And I didn't mention, but according to that book, it is translated from Serbo-Croatian. The next work I have is a work of Japanese literature and is translated from the Japanese, and that is Diary of a Void. This is another book that as soon as I heard about it, I was like, I need to go and look at it in person, and I'm glad I found it in person at a bookstore. When 34-year-old Shibata gets a new job in Tokyo to escape sexual harassment at her old one, she finds that as the only woman at her new workplace, she is expected to do all the menial tasks. One day, she announces she can't clear away her co-workers' dirty cups because she's pregnant and the smell nauseates her. The only thing is, Shibata is not pregnant. Okay. And another book that I have that has been translated is by an author that I also want to give a second chance to, and was, again, a book I couldn't get from the library or find in a bookstore, and trust me, I looked. And that is Death and the Penguin by Andrey Kurkov. I will say that this is one that you may have to look for multiple titles of it if you're interested in purchasing it. It is translated from the Russian. Andrey Kurkov is a Ukrainian author. It is a masterful tale set in post-Soviet Kiev that's both darkly funny and ominous. I mean, it's Death and a Penguin. How could it not be both? And this book is described as crime fiction, and the description on the back is so good. I'm just going to read it to you word for word because it's worth it. Aspiring writer Viktor Zolotaryov leads a down and out life in poverty and violence racked Kiev. He's out of work, and his only friend is a penguin, Misha, that he rescued when the local zoo could no longer feed its animals. But Victor doesn't know how to keep himself alive, let alone an animal so out of its element. Even more nerve wracking, a local mobster has taken a shine to Misha and wants to keep borrowing him for events, like mafioso funerals, like you do. But Victor thinks he's finally caught a break when he lands a well paying job at the Kiev newspaper writing living obituaries of local dignitaries, articles to be filled for use when the time comes. The only thing is, the time always seems to come as soon as he writes the article. And slowly understanding that his own life may be in jeopardy, Victor soon comes to realize that the only thing that might be keeping him alive is his penguin. I love it. What's not to love about that? Aren't you curious? I want to know. And if you have not read anything by this author, I read earlier this year Gray Bees, and I think it was my favorite book that month. This author is so good at combining like humor and socio-political topics and political topics and war and just character-driven stories that are just warm and cozy and heartrending and important, that I can't wait to read something else by him. At least I'm hoping all his books are like that because I haven't read it yet. But I did read one of his other works, so that's got to count for something. At least that's what we always hope when we follow up with an author. Anyway, that's it. That's all the books I have to show for. That's all the books that I have to show for today. If you love or even just like book hauls, I have more coming up. So be sure to like and subscribe and do those things, and you'll get to see some more. And I will talk to you next time. Bye. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. The Dispossessed, masterful, thought-provoking tale of anarchism,